Good afternoon. It's been an interesting day so far, and I think it's very clear why we are here today, because we need to understand the impact of this change in the world and all this technology. And the reality is that we are really living in a fast-changing world. It's lots of different things and interesting happening around us. A friend of mine arrived home another day, and he has a 14-year-old son, and the son was lying on the couch watching TV. And he said, were you not supposed to be doing your homework? And the kid said, no, Dad, don't worry. I've dealt with it. I've outsourced it to a kid in China. I'll get it by tomorrow morning before o'clock. Possible today. There was a case in the US a few months ago that an employee of a consultancy company was outsourcing his work, in fact, to Chinese people, and they didn't know about it. They found out quite, I think, a year down the line or something like that. So it is a fast-changing world. What does it mean for us? It means that we need to keep up, that we need to adapt to change to survive. The consumer of today, with the evolving technology, the continuous globalization, the saturation of markets in majority of categories, are having an unprecedented level of choices that they can get access to it in an instant way, as we've been looking at it the whole day. Some experts say that half of the companies that are in the market today won't survive these profound changes that we have been going through. So what do we have to do to be one of them? I think it goes back to the topic of my presentation. How do we get these consumers to be loyal or to buy our products or our brands or come to our stores or buy our services? And more than loyalty, in Nestlé we like to talk about advocacy. So we want to take the consumers, the shoppers, or the customer, whatever we want to call it, through this pyramid and make sure that they become advocates of our brand, especially the current customer of today, or the current consumer of today. Because with the amount of integration that they have, the amount of power of communication that they have, and the way they behave that we're going to see a little bit more in detail going forward, if they become an advocate, that can be the most powerful factor that you're going to have for your brand or for your company. But if they advocate against you, that will also have terrible or can have terrible effects to your brand. So that's how you need to understand where your brand or your company or your service sit in that scale. And more important than that, understand why do they sit there. And that's what we spend, in our case at Nestle, and I'm sure in a lot of our companies the same, a lot of our time doing it. What's the perception of the consumers or the customers about your brand or your products? What do they believe you stand for? Because a lot of times we think one thing inside and the perception outside is different. The consumer of today, or the big part of the consumers of today, they go beyond just the product, what you're offering, in fact, from a concrete way. They are buying why? Why are you in this business? Why are you doing that? And I'm not talking about profit here. I'm really talking about what's the purpose of your company, of your brand. They're really going, because of this amount of choice that they have, they go beyond the product intrinsics more than ever before. We're going to go into detail. And then the how you do it, which I'm not going to spend too much time because we touched on it so far today. There's a lot of overlap, I think, in between the presentations, that I'll save some time on that. The current generation is called what a lot of people call the millennials. These are the consumers that were born between 1981, 1982, up to 2000. They are the bulk of the shoppers today. Globally, they represent more than a quarter of the shoppers. And they have a very interesting way to behave. First, this generation grew up already with high-speed internet in bigger part of their life, with digital music, with instant messaging. So they have this dual life that they are used to. The real world integrated to the digital world. They are enthusiasts. They haven't been like the baby boomers or even the Generation X. They haven't been through so much hardship. So they have a more optimistic view about the world and a little bit more enthusiastic view about the world. But at the same time, they are massive multitaskers. So to grab their attention is not so easy. And you have to have this omni-channel approach that some people touch on, and I'll give some examples. At the same time, they are quite worried about the environment and the world. That's quite important for them. They grew up listening about global warming. They grew up listening about obesity, water scarcity. They have been exposed to all these themes. So in their minds, when you talk to these consumers or the customers, they are worried about what's happening to the environment, to the world, and what is your company or your brand doing about that. It's beyond just the product in that sense. They have a strong sense of we. They behave like a tribe, in fact. That's what marketeers like to make the analogy with. They don't do almost anything by themselves. They need to get the approval. They need to get the opinion. They need to have the green light from their friends or family. And we'll talk about that a little bit going forward. They do that before they buy something nowadays, because they have the mobile in their hands or they have an iPad. They go into social work, even in the store, and say, look what I found, what are you guys thinking? And then if they get the, okay, that is cool, they will go for it. Not anymore like the previous generation that would share and you had word of mouth after the purchase happens. They are savvy shoppers, but they behave in a slightly different way again than the previous generation. They are more frugal in their behaviors. They are what we call grazing shoppers. They flirt with the products, flirt with the brands, look at the internet, search for it, compare price, and then decide what to buy. So in a way, they are more anti-impulsive than previous generations before them. And they have this need to share. It's not anymore about the experience of owning something or buying it alone. It's about, okay, I'm going to have this experience, but I want to share it with my friends. Is it something that will make me popular or cool or accepted, depending, of course, on the age profile and everything. Of course, I'm touching it at a surface as well. I'm simplifying. You can segment a lot this group of consumers. That takes us back to the why do your brand do what you do. And I don't know if some of you heard about Simon Sinek. He has a book called Start with the Why. It's a very interesting model where he describes how consumers interact with brands and why do they buy into brands. And he used Apple as a simple example because everybody relates to. And they say Apple doesn't communicate or doesn't talk to consumers in the same way of a lot of other companies do. They don't tell you, for example, I make great computers. They are beautifully designed, user-friendly, we want to buy one. That's what everybody else does. No, they do the other way around. They tell you, why do they do it? They say, we believe in being against the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. We do that by doing everything we do beautifully designed, user-friendly, easy to use. You just happen to make computers. Would you like to buy one? We also happen to make cell phones. We also happen to make tablets. And people buy into it. And that's why they are loyal to it. It's beyond just the products. There are as many good computers from other brands as the Apple's one in the market, but not the same loyalty with it. In Nestle, we have a case like that as well. If you think about Nespresso, if 10, 15 years ago we had showed that to consumers and said, would you like to pay 15 to 20 Rand for a capsule of coffee that you need to have this machine, so you have to buy the machine as well for 1,000 or 2,000 or 4,000 Rand, depending on the model you get, what do you think the answer would have been? Forget about it. But when you tell them that we are passionate about coffee, that we want a consistent coffee experience at home as good as you have it made from a barista in a bar, and you can have access to different flavors into your coffee and everything. By the way you do that is by buying this machine and buying our capsules. It's a whole different story. So it's a subtle difference from where you start from that makes a big impact to consumers. These current consumers, they are a lot about trust. Again, beyond the product, they need to trust your brand. And nowadays, in the current environment, with access to information, the integration with social, digital, mobile, and everything, it's very easy to lose this trust. Just look at the meat scandal we have been having the last few weeks, and it's difficult to recover from that. Value takes a whole new dimension. They are looking for value, but it's perceived value. And perceived value can, in this case, sometimes be a good deal. Because this generation doesn't need to own it for life anymore. They don't have this need. Some of them will live with their parents until they are 30, 30-something. They don't care about that. They will be okay to rent a house, not necessarily to buy it. They will be okay to lease a car, not necessarily to own it, as long as it fulfills their needs at that moment. So the perceived value for your category has to be determined. It's quite important. Quality is a given, but it's broader than just delivering what you promise with the intrinsics of the product again. It's how is the quality of a process, how are you impacting your environment again, how are you impacting the community that you live in. And they are looking for full satisfaction. And here is more than just convenient. They really want you to give them convenience, a good price, a good product, and help the community that you are in, and be green to the environment, and be socially responsible. So it's beyond what we have been doing so far. And it's quite demanding on both retailers and manufacturers. I won't spend too much time here because I think we touched on that a lot, and I know Craig will talk a little bit after as well. I think the one point I want to make in this slide is the message must be consistent. You have to be in all the channels. You have to engage these guys and talk to them, not just from a brand point of view, but from availing the shopping point of view. In the past, we used to talk about how my brand can be present everywhere. Now we need to allow them to get your products or get your service everywhere. But it's very important to be consistent across. From the real life to the virtual world, your message has to be the same. And I didn't do the research like Zane did, but when I go into the internet and everything, it's very common to find companies, doesn't matter the size, that they say one thing in their TV ad, and you go to their website, it's a different message, and in their mobile is a different story, and their Facebook is talking about something completely different. So it becomes a little bit schizophrenic. So what is that really about? We need to offer them seamless integration, and I will put a little bit of the opposite spin to that. We have been the whole morning, I think, talking about how important is to be mobile. It is. But it's also very important to be in real bricks and mortar, as we call, to be in real world. That I don't think it's going to disappear. We don't believe in that. These consumers also want to have this experience. I don't know if you heard, but Amazon is planning to have their first real store as an experience store in the US. Google is thinking about doing the same in Europe. So these guys are starting to go the other way around. Why? Because this consumer is demanding this full experience. They want to also be able to interact with you in the real world, not just in the virtual world. And social, as I said, is becoming more and more important, although it's not big in terms of sales really today, but in terms of awareness and affirmation, if you want, or recognition, as we were talking about. It's quite important. I had put a few examples here as well of things that are happening, but I think we've been through a lot this morning. I don't need to go back. The Korean example that Zen talked about in the subways, big success for Tesco in the Korean market. Walmart, the pickup today. You can do your shopping online and then fetch in every store that you select in the US already in the same day. This first picture here is the department store in the US, JCPenney. They really embrace the digital world by having these gigantic screens is their store, 42-inch screens, that you can, in their store, search whatever product you want in the internet, check their inventory, see recommendations, see reviews from other customers or consumers, and then decide if you want to buy there or if you're going to buy online even in the store if you want. Because consumers nowadays are doing that. They are walking the stores and buying online sometimes. The other times they are searching for it online and going buy in the store. So for them, there is no differential. It's an integrated commerce more than e-commerce versus offline commerce, I would say. So how to get them to interact and to be loyal to you, I think is to find this ideal combination of why are you doing what you're doing, what is your purpose, does anybody in your company understands that, does the consumer understand that, or is just something that is some presentation that you made to the board or to whoever else at some point, and then how do you do it? If your store as a retailer can offer consumers simple inspiration and information, and by the way, show to them that you have a social conscience, you're probably going to get some loyalty in there. But they want simplicity as well. We need to keep that in mind. And I'll touch a little bit on that. And I want to go back a little bit to the real world after this. When we talk about all this e-commerce and digital, and we talk about this consumer and we understand how much they want solutions rather than just different offers, is the current store or the current retailer store, average retailer store, okay for this consumer today, before we even talk about a website or a mobile offer? There's a lot that will have to change in this. The average store, the word or supermarket to hypermarkets carry average 40,000 SKUs. Any consumer in average day is bombarded by plus 3,000 plus marketing messages. They don't have time for that. And if you think about, okay, you have the expansion in Africa, especially of retailers into the rest of the continent, that will provide growth. But in your own area, it will be very difficult to attract too much more feet in a store, because stores are proliferating and you have e-commerce options and this. So what you need to do is to make the current customers loyal and increase their basket. And that's not helping with that, in fact. We know from the statistics that although consumers say they do, just 2% of consumers really walk all the stores, for example, because they don't think it's attractive enough. In fact, they see it as one of the least favorite things that they want to do in life. They spend around 58 to 60 seconds per session. So how are we going to attract them to your store, to the aisle that's more profitable to you, and as a manufacturer to your brand and to your section? Just a few stats to go quickly through it. Just 21% of shoppers use shopping list. Consumers walk out of the stores if they don't find the products that they are looking for. Once they trade down, they try something else, they don't come back. And a lot of decisions are made in the point of sales too. And that's very, very important to keep in mind. So how do we make that more attractive and integrated? I won't go into all these details, don't worry. That's just to say that by category and by segment in the one you are acting on, you need to understand the influence of your category. What is driving the consumer behavior, the shopper behavior into your stores or related to your products? A few examples, for example, that comes from ice cream, which is my area where we do around the world. The decision tree to buy an ice cream product is very different from market to market. These are basics, and it's amazing how we don't know these things if you think about a lot of times, if we don't have data for it or we didn't think about checking it. That changes completely your strategy from start to, and it is quite different. And then you decide how you can act on it. Other simple things, again, if I don't find the products I have, chances are I'm not going to buy. Again, from ice cream, one example from my experience in China, for example, the latest research we had in retail, consumers, because they value fresh products a lot and vegetables and all those things, a lot of consumers are choosing their stores and their repertoire of stores based on the quality of their cold chain, which is a major issue in South Africa. And it's just a detail that sometimes we don't think about it. But they will choose between you and the guy that's one block down the line based on the quality of your freezers, because they are looking for fresh products or good quality on that. So are we looking at these basics before we go into more sophisticated things? And then, of course, we need to translate all this knowledge into action. The only way to, and that's one example of it, we had, and a lot of manufacturers think it's the same, the moment you start to signalize the aisles to the guys in terms of types of products and categories to make the shopping experience easier, sales grow by anything between 4 to 10% just by doing that, just to make their experience easier. The other side of it, of course, is point of sale material. We know that you usually have 3 seconds in store to grab the shopper attention. And if you grab their attention, you probably have 8 seconds of interaction with your material or your section of the aisle. So if you don't do it right, if you make it too complicated, you're going to lose them. So these are all things that we have to think about. And the only way to make it work is to work collaboratively with retailers, between manufacturers and retailers. If we keep fighting this fight of trying just about price or just about rebates and everything, it's not going to work, neither in e-commerce or in the real life. The reality of the retail in South Africa is that, although it's very strong, there is a lot to evolve still. Just think about category management. We don't do category management in South Africa. We do space planning. Do you have an idea of how many times in a year this supermarket store in South Africa would change their layout? Once a year, if they do it. In the UK, Tesco change their layouts twice a week, because they know that the shopping pattern of shoppers in the end of the week is different from the beginning of the week. And it's different at the end of the month, it's different in Easter, it's different in Christmas. So they are managing that together with retailers all the time. So it's still, we have a lot of opportunities in that sense, a long way to go. And it's collaborating at all levels of the value chain. Not anymore just sales talking to buyers, or sales customer teams talking to the operational director. It has to happen marketing to marketing, finance to finance, all the departments across everything. Then the last point, and then I'll open for some questions, which happens a lot coming from a big company like I do. It's very easy to lose your track even inside the company. Don't even talk when you start to engage with the retailers, that they also have a lot of complexity and process inside their companies. It's very easy to go in a tangent or lose track of what we're really trying to do. So what we insist with our teams a lot is to keep it simple, keep it consistent, keep it clear. At the end of the day, we're still talking about consumer that are trying to fulfill a need. So although the tools are much more complex today, or there are much more tools available and much more ways to talk to them or engage it to them, your message still has to have one message, one clear, straight to the point. And I'll just leave you guys with a little story that I heard when I started, in fact, to do marketing my MBA. And it's the story of the three butcher brothers. I've adapted to South Africa, so it goes that you had three butcher brothers that had their butcher stores one beside the other. And the first one, Pete, with the economic crisis, he was battling a little bit, not getting enough feet in the store, business going down. He said, okay, what can I do? So, well, maybe I'll let people know that I am a butcher and then I'm here. So he puts a sign into the store that says butcher. And as simple as that, he starts to have more people going to the stores. Now the other two brothers are quite worried because now they're losing the few customers that they have to the brothers. So the other one in the other side said, well, I will do better than them. So I'll say master butcher. And then he starts to have a lot of traffic as well. And the one in the middle is now battling, quite almost desperate because nobody's walking into his store. So he thinks and thinks and thinks, and then he has an idea of what to do. And that's what he does. So I think just to make the point that it doesn't need to be so complicated. We need to understand the tools, use the tools, but to go back to Zane's point, is about the consumer at the end of the day. What is he looking for? What does he really want? And that's what we need to fulfill, both as manufacturers and retailers. And if we find that, the rest will come true.